Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Start putting your questions in the comments now so that as soon as I'm finished with what I have to tell you about, I can jump straight into your questions. It's an exciting week. We have gotten a lot of approvals in different cases, all of them resulting in either the green card or the work permit. However, I want to talk about some of the most inspirational approvals that we have for this week. And this has to do with the T status. It is a kind of relief that not a lot of immigrants know about, and not even a lot of immigration attorneys. They know about it, but they don't know they have not really looked into how to screen for who qualifies. And some attorneys don't even know about it. And so when you talk to some attorneys, they don't even know, they don't even realize that they can't identify whether you qualify, right? Because they don't even know about it. So they can't tell you that you qualify. So I want to tell you about this relief because it has offered my clients the opportunity to stay here in the US, the opportunity to get their work permits for years and be able to get their permanent residence, to be able to get their work permit and their permanent residence for their relatives. Um, and this is in cases where they did not have any other options. And had I not identified that these clients qualified for this relief, they would be left dead in the water without any form of immigration relief. They would continue to live in fear of deportation, live in fear of changes to immigration policies. The latest thing I'm seeing is that now DeSantis is looking to expand his agenda nationally. So if he becomes president, we're looking at the end of citizenship, so birthright citizenship, meaning those who are born to immigrants here, who, if the child is born to an immigrant who is not a citizen, they will not be considered US citizens, right? This is what he's trying to do right now. If you're born here, doesn't matter where your parents came from, doesn't matter, um, about anything else in your past. It doesn't matter about your parent status. Your child is a US citizen, or if you were born here on US soil, you are a US citizen. However, he's looking to change that. So keep in mind that his agenda, should he win the presidency, which is a scary possibility, but we saw Trump win, and we saw the kind of damage he did with immigration. We're dealing with the repercussions of the damage now, the backlogs, and all of the terrible policies he implemented. We're dealing with that now. So can you imagine if he wins the presidency, that he could possibly, now this is it's in the Constitution that when you are born in the United States, you are a citizen. But he's talking about adopting strategies to change that rule, so that if you're an immigrant here, you don't have status, you give birth to children here, those children would also be considered undocumented. They would be considered having no status. That's scary here, right? So this form of relief that I'm going to talk about, it presents options for individuals, for my clients, that they can, throughout all the changes in government, once they gain their status, they don't have to look over their shoulder about who's going to bust through their door to deport them, right? And my clients got this relief just in time. One of them is located in Florida, so she does not have to leave now. She can stay here, settle here with her children. Now I'm talking about the T status. And if you look at the subject of this live, you'll see here, can you relate to Cinderella? Now, Cinderella, even if you're a man, even if you're a woman, if you're put in a situation where you have to work in a house, work in a business, you're being worked to the bone. You didn't sign up for this, but somehow you were convinced to do this. Now you're in this situation. You feel stuck. You can't get out of it. You're undocumented here. Then you could possibly qualify here. Because whenever I hear situations like this, it's either you were induced, you were convinced to work for somebody or work in the household of somebody else, because they promised you things. Maybe they promised you that they would get the work permit for you. Maybe they promised you that they would get something else of value for you that they never delivered on. Or it could be that you felt forced, literally forced. You may have been threatened, even. Your family members may have been threatened. You have been threatened with ICE. You may have even faced physical force, but physical force isn't required to qualify here. My rule of thumb is, if you are in a situation, you are being worked to the bone, you are convinced to do this by fraud, meaning you are promised something, they like a work permit, or you're promised something of value that you never got. Could be wages. You were promised a certain wage, and then when you went into the work, they didn't pay you. They paid you little or nothing. They paid you less than you promised. But the fact that they offered you a certain amount, that's what convinced you to start the work. But when you started, that wasn't the case. Examples like that, it means that that's fraud. That's an example of fraud. If they threatened you with ICE, if you leave this house or if you leave this job, I'm going to call ICE. I'm going to send you back home. I have the power to do that. I'm going to call immigration and tell them you didn't work for me. That is a form of coercion, and it qualifies you for T status as a victim of labor trafficking. And then also physical force. If that also is included, if you are being mistreated, not only verbally, not only emotionally, but physically. And this also applies to intimate partners who brought you here, brought you into this situation. They may have promised to marry you. They may have promised to get your papers. When you came here, you found yourself being forced to do things for this individual, this intimate partner. Then you could qualify for relief. I am telling you about this because my clients here, and I'm going to go into each case, each situation, so you can understand the what the how valuable this relief was to each of my clients, right? So I'm going to go through 3 cases where we have won this. Now, the first case, and all of them, if you ask them, all of them could relate to Cinderella in this case, where they were overworked, they were underpaid or not paid at all. They were working in the household or working in somebody else's business. Now, if you were let's talk about the first case that was approved, that we got just in the last 2 weeks. So this client called me, and we talked in detail, because this is how I do my consultations. I go through every single aspect of every single relevant aspect of their background. Anything that's relevant, I ask questions about it. Their relatives, where have they been? How did they enter the United States? Do they fare anything in their country? And is their employer mistreating them? Now, for each one of the questions I had regarding my client's background, it did not result in any immigration relief. And now I did ask about the employer mistreatment. And at first, the answer was just no. They don't have an employer that's mistreating them. And oftentimes, that's the first answer I get, because if you put yourself in the shoes of an undocumented immigrant, they are just grateful that they are able to work. For even though they're making a small amount of money, they're not making the amount they deserve. They are just grateful to be. Sometimes they even feel as if they're being shielded by this individual who turns out to be a trafficker. But unfortunately, at that point, towards the end of the appointment, I said to the person that turned into my dear client that, based on all her answers to my very detailed questions, she doesn't qualify. And right when we were about to end the consultation, she blurted out, her employer calls her names. And I said, okay, let's stop here and I'm gonna reevaluate this because this is something new. She didn't say. Luckily, she did find the courage to open up to me. At first, she was hesitant, she was scared, but she opened up to me because everything in these consultations are confidential. But sometimes, even with me stating that, the people are scared, right, to say these things or to admit they're being mistreated. At that point, I did find out that the employer was promised her a work permit. They promised her, but even though they promised a work permit, they gave her fraudulent documents like gave her I don't think an ITIN, an EIN number saying that's her SSN, that makes her legal, told her all sorts of BS about, the fact that she has granted her the ability to work here legally in the US with this EIN number, this employer identification number. She said it was a tax identification number. It was not. That was fraudulent. That's fraud. In addition to that, she told her, if you stick this out with me for 3 years, you'll get your work permit. That again is fraud. And in a way, it's coercion because she's telling her that you want this work permit, you need to stay with me no matter how badly I treat you. And then from there on, she would make fun of her. This was in huge, and this is a common occurrence that I find in these homes where they take care of disabled people or elderly people. They are really, that trafficking is very heavy in that industry. So beware if you're being promised a job in a setting like that. Be very wary about it because trafficking is very heavy in that area. Now, when when we delved into detail, she was calling her name. She was making fun of her in front of the people she was taking care of. She was threatening to call the police. She was docking her pay if anything got lost. She would not pay her. She paid her very, very, very little. I think it added up to $3 an hour for the number of hours she was working. I think she was working upwards of 100 hours a week, meaning 24/7. She was living at the facility. All of that amounted together, all in one, amounted to labor trafficking. And my dear client she gave me her trust. I told her that she is being labor trafficked. At the time, she didn't even know what that was. I let her know that in this situation, she's being labor trafficked. She could verbalize what she was going through. She could verbalize that she knew something wasn't right, but she didn't know what to call it. She didn't know how to identify this until I let her know that what is happening to her is wrong. Even though, yes, she's undocumented, she's not supposed to be treated that way. It's in violation of state laws, it's in violation of federal laws. We jump straight into getting her the T status. She's approved now. Now, not only did she get approved, but her two children who are currently in Jamaica are going to come here on their visa. They're going to be able to live here with her now. She was unable to see them. She had to leave her kids with people to take care of them. And she had to make those sacrifices here. And now her investment and her trust in me has resulted in T status for her children. And just in time here with the new law coming in, she's here in Florida. She's able to now stay here and live, get a good job, get a job that she deserves. She has options now because that work permit is not limited. It's a 4-year work permit, and she can go anywhere in the country she wants. She can work in any industry. Now, another added benefit of this is that the T status, now some clients don't need it, but for clients who they have escaped trafficking, like this client, and now their children, she's being unified with her children, they need assistance, additional support, and the federal government, through the Department of Human Services, provides that additional support where the client wants it. It's not something that's forced on them, but if they want the additional support, if they need additional medical care, social services, they have a case manager that they can reach out to get that assistance. The T status holders are treated similar to refugees, meaning that they get a lot more assistance to help them to settle here. But it's not finished yet. It's not finished yet. We are going to move forward with looking. So in the future, so anytime you have T status, they will inform you that you have the option to pursue permanent residence. So it doesn't stop with 4 years and then it's over. But my client will be able to also explore her options for the green card in the future. So it's amazing. She would not have had an option otherwise. And right now we have additional clients who have joined the ST Law family, in very, very similar situations, that have did not have options otherwise, that can now look to this relief, right? So that's the one. So I really count this as 3 victories, because our client joined us, the ST Law family, but her children will also have a good future here, because of this. She's a great mother, and she all she talked about were her children and her concern for her children, and now she's going to be with her children. So that's the first one. Now the other case we have, I do count this as 2 victories. So we had a client here who was brought here as a 16-year-old by her own aunt. Her aunt, this is her flesh and blood, who promised her that she would bring her here. She's going to take her on as her own. She's going to send her to school. She convinced my client's mother that she was going to take such good care of her child. She came here thinking she had a bright future with her aunt's help, that she was going to get her college education that the aunt would pay for. But the minute she stepped through the door, she was turned into a nanny, right? For this aunt. This aunt had no intention to do anything of that sort. The aunt restricted her movements. The aunt put her to work. She cooked meals for the aunt and her kids, babysitted the aunt's grandkids. She she was not allowed to, she had to do the laundry. She had to do the cleaning, right? She was basically Cinderella, right? I mean, it's identical, the storyline, except there's no prince right here. There was nobody here saving her. She had to try to get out of the situation on her own. And after bearing this for a year, she had to run away. And she left her name. She was young. She just turned 18. Just turned 18. She was didn't know where to turn to, because when she left, the aunt threatened her. that if she left, that would be it. So she had no help. Um, when she left, she ended up starting a family, and her husband was undocumented as well, right? So she ended up getting married, but her husband was undocumented. And she turned to me for assistance. She opened up to me, thankfully, about what happened to her. That she came here as a minor, and then was mistreated by the aunt. She was promised that she would get an education, and it was nothing like that. She was turned into a nanny and a housekeeper. And in addition to that, when she was living there, she was treated less than. She was put into, a room that was not held to the standard of the rest of the household. She was the only one who had to do the. Now, I do understand there are households where you have your chores. Yes, I mean, growing up in the Caribbean, I know that we have our chores that we have to do as children, but this was nothing like that. She was the only one of all the kids, all the young people in the house that had to do the cleaning. She had to clean for everybody. She had to cook for everybody. She had to wash the clothes for everybody. That is a form of labor trafficking, especially when you're dealing with, I mean, this is labor trafficking regardless, but when you're dealing with, you promised a minor that they would go to school, and you would take good care of them, and then this is what you do. That's a form of labor trafficking. Well, she was approved, but not only was she approved, but she stuck with her spouse. They stuck together. They worked together while they're building their family. They never wavered as a couple. And even though they're both undocumented, I've heard of cases where other people, they'll do things like get divorced and try to set up false marriages and all sorts of unscrupulous things. In this case, they stuck together to try to figure out a solution, and we found that solution for them. Not only did she get her T status, but her spouse got his T status with her just by being her husband. Just by being her husband, he got it as well. And this is after he had multiple denials because he had crossed the border without permission. So he had multiple denials, and there was also a misrepresentation charge. Misrepresentation comes with a permanent bar. No relief there, except with this T status. They forgave the misrepresentation, forgave the crossing the border without permission. We overcame all of that, and overcame past denials that he himself experienced, for him to now have his T status with his spouse. They can now support their family. They can get the work they want. They can now look to a bright future. They can support their children, knowing that they don't have to look over their shoulders. They don't have to face the threats of deportation from others, like the aunt that even after she left, they continued to threaten her, threaten that they would call immigration. She does not have to worry about this anymore because she's in this special category where the immigration service now understands that she was a victim here. So she's in a protected status, and she is going to be able to access the support she needs to build a life here for her spouse, and her family. So just such inspirational victories for me this week, just because these were clients that they reached out to me with no options, but they put their trust in me, and I greatly appreciate it. And that makes it a lot more fulfilling in that we were able to deliver. And that's what we do. We fight for our clients, and we find the solutions here, where we don't just look at what are the common solutions. We don't, even though yes, it's relevant to ask, are you married to a citizen? Because it can lead to relief like VAWA. It can mean that the spouse can file for them to get their green card. But we don't, once you say you're not married, we don't say, sorry, no hope. Because that's something I find that a lot of lawyers do, is that they will say, oh, you're not married, go find a spouse. When you find a spouse, come back. Um, we look at different options here, and these are the victories that we've had. So overall, our work has impacted, let's see, 5 lives. So even though I call it, so each of the clients that hired me was 3, we have impacted the children involved and the spouse involved. So I just want to give you an example here of what these cases look like and how we're able to get the approvals here, so that you understand how detailed we are and how much your circumstances and the facts matter. And that if you talk to me in a consultation and you're completely open and honest with me, we can look at every single option on the table for you. And that's just one. So the T status is just one of those. But we look at all the different other options. As you know, there's VAWA. If you're being mistreated by a spouse, a parent, or a child, an adult child, that can qualify you for relief. There's asylum. There's also Section 245I, where if you have a petition or you were a derivative on a petition filed on or before April 30th, 2001, you may qualify to stay here and apply for your green card, as long as you have somebody, you qualify another way, through an employer or through another relative. So there are different options here, and your circumstances, the facts, your family history. What have you been through? Who's your family member? Who's your spouse? Who did you even divorce? Because sometimes there's relief where you're divorced. Who have you had a spouse who recently passed away? That can result in relief for you. So facts matter here, and circumstances matter. It's not just about the basics. We get into detail. All right, so now I've told you about these inspirational approvals that we've gotten this week. I want to now jump into your questions, because I think I've said enough. Now you can always ask follow-up questions, or you can ask anything that's immigration related. So just put those questions in the comments. I'm scrolling through now to answer your questions. So what if you get denied 2 times? So it depends. Sometimes denials can complicate your situation. As I said before, like for example, with the T status, my client was denied multiple times previously, and now they're approved. So having a denial does not necessarily mean that in the future you can't qualify for something else or even the same relief. But it's going to depend on why, the reason for the denials. What kind of denial did you get? What if married but the spouse is pressuring you for money? Yes, so this, it can result in T status, but I would need to know more. Okay, you got married, the spouse is pressuring you for money. Are they a citizen? Are they a resident? That could be in VAWA. Or if they're not, if they're undocumented, what I need to understand what the situation is. They're pressuring you for money, but what else is going on at the same time? So this, you could have options here. This is where the consultation is very important, because, and I think that's while I try to come on and give you information, I'm really giving you this information to take the steps you need to take for yourself, figure out the options, to get the assistance, and to reach out to me, because I can never the details I need in a live or in the DMs, it has to be in a consultation because that's where I can properly advise. And so this I see here, good morning, I sent you a DM. Can you check? So with keep in mind the DM, you probably got the response that says that you need to contact us. And this is exactly why. Because the DM, it does not allow me to jump into the details necessary. And it's also a liability issue. I can't give legal advice through Messenger. It's just not feasible. So go ahead, call the office, or you can go to the link in the profile and schedule time to talk to me in a consultation. I mean, you can always ask questions in the DM, like general questions, but when it comes on to detailed legal advice, that general questions would be, where's your office located? Sometimes we get those. I'm in New Jersey, can you represent me? Yet the answer to that is absolutely. We represent clients in all 50 states. So no matter where you are, our successes was this week, Florida, and we also received the approval in Connecticut. So we represent clients all over. My daughter got married abroad. Her husband came to the USA after he got the green card. He left her. Is there any way he can deport? So if he's threatening to have her deported, then go ahead and let's talk about it. If he got his green card, still married, then there's also the possibility for her to get VAWA, especially if he has threatened to get her deported. Can he deport her? What I say is make sure you look out for your own interest. If he's threatening to deport, don't underestimate this person. There are hotlines out there that allow individuals to call and report things like fraud or report immigrants. It's a possibility that by taking those actions, they can definitely create problems for an immigrant and the spouse in this case, your daughter. This is where VAWA is very important. Is if VAWA allows the immigrant to protect themselves by first bringing forth to the immigration service that they're being mistreated, that this is happening to them, so that the immigration service is now on their radar. So the immigration service, if they're getting calls about the immigrant being undocumented or worse, that like they committed fraud, the immigration service is now on notice that this immigrant is being mistreated anyway. So they can't just take that information and use it against the immigrant. It would have to be corroborated. But if it's just the abuser who's doing the mistreating, that's calling the hotline, they need to be the they can't just take that information and use it. So this is where also applying for relief is very important because it puts immigration service and ICE on notice that you're the victim here. How long after your biometrics for marriage base do you receive your work permit and SSN? So I don't go by after the biometrics just because biometrics are all over the place. I would say 3 to 6 months after the filing of the application. So I know a lady who was promised by her citizen son to file for her upon coming here. She can't find her son. He went to another state. She has all his information. What can she do? So if that's the case, now definitely that person should call and talk to me. Because yes, okay, he promised to file for her, but at the same time, was there some mistreatment going on? Why did he promise to do that? Was he stringing her along? Was this a way to get some sort of be vindictive against her, there may be relief here for her through VAWA. So if the citizen's son is age 21 or over, and it sounds like there were some false promises made, I would have to evaluate what other facts are there. There may be relief. Will illegal non-immigrants be able to travel to the state of Florida from other states through the airport? So, I would say it's complex, right? Um, I would say yes, but there are some risk. If an undocumented immigrant comes in through the airport, but they come now, nothing is going to stop them from going through navigating the airport because the airport is the TSA is secured by usually the federal government. So you're not going to deal with any kind of Florida law enforcement in the airports. However, when you get outside of the airport, then you going to drive? And if you drive, are you driving with an out of state driver's license? If so, you could face a citation. And if you get a citation, you fail to pay it, that could lead to more problems. You could end up going to court. So in that case, there's that risk there regarding traveling. Another is if you came in with a visa that expired or you overstayed, that doesn't the traveling into the state is not going to impact you. But if you came into the country without permission, traveling into the airport, the legislation talks about traveling in by vehicle, not by plane. But you never know if they can get more creative with it, or they can try to expand the application of this by saying maybe coming out of the airport and driving from the airport into the in public area of Florida is somehow transporting an immigrant. I don't seem that broad. Um, so yeah, it doesn't seem that broad, but it's just there are so many risks associated with traveling in, and so it's really on a case by case basis. If you're coming into the country, you don't have your papers. It also depends on why you're coming into the state. Are you coming into the state to work? Because then if you're coming into the state to work, you might have a problem there. No, the problem is that if you're looking for work, you might not be able to find it because employers are going to be a lot more aware of the risk they face if they hire an immigrant. And then also, if you are hired by the employer is going to face additional risk in hiring you. So many different concerns there. All right. I'm Florida, and what does this mean for me with the new laws coming on July 1st? This is where the consultation is very important. If you're here, you're working without a permit in Florida after July 1st, then it means that you could be out of work if the employer decides that they don't want to take the risk on anymore of hiring you. Or right, I think that's the main risk here, or you might be finding it hard to find work. So the opportunities might be slimmer here in regards to finding work, or if you're currently working, you could find yourself out of work. So I have submitted my immigration papers through marriage. How can I have you represent me, and what's the cost to do so? So this is where the consultation is also very important because every case is different. We need to understand what your situation is to be able to provide you a code to represent you. The cost for the consultation is a small investment to get that legal advice, and it's $150 for up to an hour. If you recently received an email from NVC saying your sponsor's taxes and your IV were incomplete, what should you do? And does that delay your case? It does delay your case. Now, with the NVC, and when we talk about the NVC, we're talking about when the relative is outside of the US. It with every email like this where they're telling you something isn't complete, something needs to be corrected, it delays it by 3 to 6 months. Yeah. So unfortunately, it is, this is where when we represent our clients, we're very, very, very thorough with submitting documentation because we want to make sure that we reduce the number of delays because we're already waiting a long time. And so by the time we get to the NVC, we want to get them, we want to reduce those delays. So now, when you're saying this is where we need to talk, we can help you with this. When they talk about your sponsor's taxes are incomplete and and your IV, I think that's your IV, your immigrant visa application is incomplete. We definitely work with all clients on these cases, and we can represent you through the rest of it. So give us a call. We can talk about what your issues are and get started. Um, so after July 1st, will undocumented people be able to fly to Florida from other states? So I did jump into detail. There are some risks, but overall, going through the airports, I don't think that's a concern. But it's what's the purpose of your trip here? I've submitted my immigration. Oh, okay. I answered that. I just answered that. All right. So that's going to be it for me today. I don't see any more questions. Thanks so much for your questions and listening in today. I hope this is helpful. Okay, so I see one more. I can't resist. If a parent mistakenly filed an F2A instead of an F2B for her son, is there a form to correct the filing? The interview at the embassy was yesterday. Um, so usually you can't necessarily, no, with the F2A, you don't necessarily mistakenly file an F2A. I mean, by virtue of submitting the application, the immigration service puts you in the category that you belong. So, not I need to get more details here to understand what happened, um, because you misfiled an F2A. So that means that your son was supposed to be under 21 and unmarried, but they are now 21 or over. They're over 21. They're 21 or over. What happened is, at the time you file the petition, they're placed in the F2B, or they may have aged out. It just depends on how they did it. But you don't mistakenly put them in the category. The immigration service puts them in the category. So I don't know if when you went to the interview, they told you, okay, it's time to process the application, because they're an F2B. So we need to talk because I need to understand, how did that even happen? How is it that they went to an interview and then they're told they're in F2B? I need to understand where that came from. Was there an aging out problem, and how did the officer come to that conclusion? So definitely schedule time and we'll talk about it and see maybe if there's even an error, if there's something that can be done. But you didn't make that mistake. I think, there's maybe some issue with the age though. All right. Thanks everyone for your time. I'll see you tomorrow at around lunchtime. Have a great day.